Welcome to Di2 GP YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to take a look at Ultegra and Dura-Ace hydraulic Di2 shifters. We're going to look at common issues, common problems, ways to fix them, and also how to prevent them. This video is going to be divided into three sections: easy, medium, and hard repairs. Starting with easy. Often what may have happened to you is you strip that hex, 2mm hex, so that one is absolutely fine. But if you manage to round it off, option number one would be to tap in torques, so slightly larger torques. If that doesn't work, you can use Dremel and carefully make incision. You have to do it in 2 or 3 sections, ideally spraying a little bit of liquid of water on the shifter, purely because obviously if you overheat it, that plastic may melt and that's going to create more problems for you. If you want to completely avoid this challenge, I would suggest either going with a 105 mechanical bleed cap, and that is available to purchase. Alternatively, if you want to be really careful and prevent any possible cross threading of threads in the future, you can go with 105 12 speed, which is slightly longer. I'm gonna take a picture of this and show you comparison. Also, if you start cross-threading this, again, a 12-speed bleed cap is slightly better because it has a more purchase, because it's longer. The second one are rubber hoods. So rubber hoods, they tend to stretch, and because obviously every time you clean your bike or you apply some silicone or lubricants, if you spill some oil when you're bleeding brakes, obviously that rubber does soak up and makes it softer, and then they tend to stretch, which obviously costs you millions of watts. So the easiest way and the safest by far way is to buy replacement. This can be purchased online at UK. I tend to buy them at SJS Cycles. You can get them elsewhere. Again, I'm not sponsored by anyone, so you can buy whatever is your retailer of choice. I'm also working on the video where I try to shrink them or bring them back to original state, but before that's finished and I know that actually works, I'm not going to post it. So stay tuned and hopefully that video is going to come out soon. The next part are shift buttons. So as you can see, that's been taken apart. But if you get sticky shift buttons, meaning obviously you apply or press gear and then one of the paddles stays depressed, what tends to happen is this is an aluminium alloy pivot, and if you get some water and not ideally but often water and salt mixture, these may oxidize and then create a buildup, meaning obviously there is a restricted movement. So what you have to do is to undo this bolt here, take it off, clean any buildup. You will see if obviously that one is clean, but if you take it off, that's going to be nicely exposed. And if you see any genuinely like salt buildup, just scrape it up with a Stanley knife or scalpel blade, apply some lube of your choice, and then reassemble together, and that should fix your restricted movement on the shift paddles, and that should be okay. The next one, very common, is a broken bracket. So when you put shift buttons together, obviously these are put together, then you got a bracket. As you can see, that sits nicely there, and as you can see, that little T moves up and down, and this bracket provides guidance. So if everything is perfectly working, you have 2 guide rails on either side. So that's the left hand side button, and that is right hand side button. And as you can see, this one here and that one here has been broken off because of crash. And what tend to happen when you, that was a lot easier, when you press the button, so basically that guide, instead of being guided through this channel, like that, maybe it's going to be easier this way. It's catching, because obviously there's nothing stopping that from moving, so it's catching on the frame. So that's why obviously you cannot move it. If you have this part, you can try gluing it, but it's just it's lost battle. I wouldn't even bother. These can be purchased again for 11 speed. For some reason they only available for rim brakes, but they exactly the same between rim brakes and hydraulic. The only difference is you have to buy specific one for Ultegra and specific one for Durace, because the brackets are slightly different. Next section is a leaky piston or leaky shifter. So in event you find yourself without brakes, hopefully not while riding, there was no visible leak around the caliper, or there was no broken line, or hopefully there was no broken shifter body, very likely what may have happened is sadly is often user error. So what happens if you use your bike, your brakes or your brake pads are wear down, and then you decided to top up the fluid, and then when you come to replacing brake pads, you push the pistons out, but you didn't release the bleed cap here. What may have happened, the pressure may pushed out the bladder, and as you can see, obviously that's nicely exposed for your viewer experience. That bleed cap sits like that, and you can see there is a little groove. So when installed, the only thing which holds it in place is, let me just demonstrate on there, is that pinch bolt here, and that's 2mm Allen key. So that just stay holding in place, and then you've got two little springs, and that axle. So there's possibly one, maybe half a millimeter play, but that's just enough if you put a lot of pressure, and because that's closed system, that bleed cap may be lifted, and then you're gonna air leak, or air is going to go inside, or brake fluid is going to leak out. So again, to take it off, you have to take the yes, definitely, you have to take a ship blade off, and then push it back. I would just say, to be on the safe side, just take it off, clean it nicely. You can blow it, so make sure there is no there's obviously no hole in the bladder, because if there is a damaged bladder, as you can see, there's a through hole, meaning obviously the air is going to escape. So I'm going to check that one and this one. I think you can buy them for, no, I know definitely you can buy them for mountain bike brakes. I don't know if they're exactly the same size for road brakes, but you can use them. They are uniform across all Di2, well, not all Di2, all hydraulic Di2, going from 8050, 9150, GRX 815, and everything from 12 speed. Then another user error. So in event you crash, so that was just attached up, but sometimes you may crash harder when you obviously break the lever, then obviously that you have to replace it. But if you got a very badly scratched lever, so that was just touched up, you have two options. You can either polish it or sand it down and polish it, leaving exposed aluminium. That looks brilliant on titanium bikes, quite old school. The only downside is you have to polish it possibly once every 2 or 3 months, unless you use it quite often. But it doesn't go bad and doesn't corrode, so you are fairly safe. Option number 2 is to completely respray it. So that's a little bit more faff. So that's been resprayed quite a while ago. I haven't had a chance to put it together. And then you can buy decals online and literally just stick them and use them as a blanking plate or mask, or you can just leave, like in this case, you can buy chrome or silver decals and just a very fine one, and you can place them on top of the paint and then coat them with a clear coat. If you want longevity, I would go for 2-component clear coat. If you want convenience, a acrylic single coat would be absolutely fine. In the final part, we're going to talk about the one of the most common issues I found where things go really bad, and this is a sticky piston. So as you can see, that's the internals of a hydraulic shifter, 11-speed. The bodies are exactly the same for Ultegra and Dura-Ace. And what tend to happen, again, user error, or possibly slightly challenging design. So when you're installing shifter, make sure you always torque it up to spec. If you over torque it, what may have happened, that obviously, because that's plastic, so that's a malleable, the casing, internal casing, aluminium casing, may bend, and if you bend that piston is going to have a hard time travel. And usually what that how that is demonstrated, when you apply brakes, the brakes is very slow to return, or you can feel resistance, almost like crunchiness when you apply brakes. So how you do it? Number one, that's the example of piston which had some abrasion, and as you can see, there was a little bit of markings around here and around here. This is how it should look like. So everything is clean. So the best way to do it would be to obviously remove both seals from that piston. So that's fairly easy to do with a pick, and that one is slightly trickier because you have to take it off with a Stanley blade or very fine scalpel knife or fine pick, because that's quite challenging. Please be careful, because if you damage that seal, that's it. You cannot buy replacement. So that's really crucial. Then you have to polish it. So I usually use 600, then 1200, then 2000 grade paper, and finish it off with a car polishing compound. So you can just polish this shaft so you get enough clearance. So when you press this, where's that one? So when you press that piston in, that's going to allow for easy movement. I had possibly 6-7 shifters like that, all been repaired, all working fine. I've been using them for good 2, maybe 3 years, had no issues whatsoever. And obviously don't go crazy with going 400 or 240 grit paper. So you need to just remove a tiny little bit and do it 5 or 6 times in small increments rather than going crazy once, because again, if you take too much material, that's it. But on the plus side, that seal here is quite, it's not that one here actually, but you got enough space for that seal to expand, so you won't lose any pressure as such through that area. So this is how you do it. A 600, 1200, 2000, and then polishing compound. You can do, I first obviously clamp it in a drill, unless you got a lathe. You can clamp it here and then polish it, and then polish that bit here if there's any resistance or movement here. So that's a semi-difficult part, and then you have to put everything together. Make sure you use lots of isopropyl alcohol to clean it. But before you use isopropyl alcohol, blow everything properly with an air compressor or with compressed air, ideally air compressor, because any dust particle can stack within these channels. And as you can see, these aren't very big. So the last thing you want to do is to introduce some aluminium debris into your brake lines. In the final section, we have a completely stripped threads on the bleed port. So this usually happens when you cross-thread it or if you over-tighten it. Sometimes I've seen repairs where people putting PTFE tape. That's very short term and, if I'm honest, quite risky solution. Another option is some people using 8mm. That, by the way, that's 7mm fine thread cap. So you can put 8mm bolt. The problem with that is your bleeding procedure is going to be extremely challenging, not to say impossible, because you cannot seal that properly. So if you're confident, I'm going to make a video sometimes in the next weeks how I fix it. But to give you a quick overview or preview, I use a special insert which is bonded inside, and that's obviously rock solid, or at least the one I fixed. I've been using that on my gravel bike for 2 years, over 2 years. So again, I wouldn't suggest or recommend something if I haven't tested myself. But again, if you decide to repair that, you have to take responsibility for your actions. And if you do it, make sure you do it properly. Don't skip any steps. Make sure you use lots of isopropyl alcohol to degrease areas before you bond them. But as you know, the safest option is to buy replacement body. There's loads of hanging around. The only difference between Ultegra and Dura-Ace is on Ultegra it says 8070 and on Dura-Ace it says 9170. That's the only difference. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you found it helpful, please like and subscribe. I'm going to create a separate video how to fix sticky pistons and also how to fix a cross-threaded bleed cap port. Stay tuned, thank you, and until next time.